How do you know the right questions to ask your AV provider when you're planning your next general session? Well, let's get into it.
Welcome to the Event Pro Show, your ultimate guide to the world of corporate events. Whether you're a corporate event planner, experiential marketing pro, producer, technician, or anyone involved in creating exceptional events, this podcast is your go-to resource for valuable insights, expert tips, and inspiring stories from the industry's leading professionals.
Well, welcome to the Event Pro Show. I am your host, Seth Macchi. I'm the CEO of LEMG. We're an event production company based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we produce primarily corporate events all over the country for our clients that tend to be event planners. And welcome to our new series called Designing a Better General Session. Now, I plan on recording a 4-part series, and welcome to part 1 of Designing a Better General Session. This episode is what are 5 AV decisions that make or break a corporate event general session. Now, I realize that there's a lot of directions you can go with a big question like, how do I create a better general session? What are decisions that need to be made that can make or break an event? So me, in my experience, I picked 5 questions that have a huge impact around designing a general session and in particular, that have an impact on budget. You know, I talk to a lot of planners all of the time, and always one of the key concerns is budget. Budget is continually rising. It's one of the AV portion of your budget is one of the biggest expenses consistently with anyone you talk to. So my 5 questions I'm going to present here impact budget directly, but there's many directions you could go with these types of discussions on what decisions have an impact. But the problem that I'm trying to address here is often seemingly small decisions in AV planning have a large impact during or after the event. So, not all corporate events are the same. So how can a planner know if they're asking the right questions? So this can show up in a lot of different ways, but if you know that once you get into an event, you think back of why did we do X, Y, Z, and sometimes it seems like a rather small decision that you made that had just this outsized impact on site. And not always positive. It can be a negative thing. So how can you prevent that? Well, I want to give you a few actionable tips in the form of questions. But what's going on behind the scenes from your AV provider is outside AV providers. And what I mean by that are AV providers that are not part of the in-house solution. So as we all know, there's like a national or global presence of 1 or 2 key in-house companies. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to typically private businesses, private companies that are AV providers, that are outside AV providers that can partner with you and provide solutions. And your AV provider, they can provide you with a wide range and scale of AV solutions to support your meeting and meetings of all shapes and sizes. In LEMG's case, we produce over 200 events a year. And so we're looking at many different types of events and many different venues and different states, different locations, different geography. And so there are a few questions that can help narrow what exactly it is that you need from your AV provider for this particular event. And so here's a few questions that you can ask that can help you, hopefully can help you plan a more efficient and frankly enjoyable event for yourself. And I mean, who doesn't like to plan a win? It's a fantastic experience. My son has just started getting into events from the marketing direction. He just planned his first large format event, and it was a great success. It's so much fun to watch someone that's planning events have a successful experience. So this is what I want for you when I'm asking these questions. But here's question number 1. Have a a pre-load in discussion with your AV lead. And different companies call it different things, but it's kind of the same. This can be your project manager or production manager or some variation of that. You need to, in this meeting, and I know that this sounds obvious, but you need to make sure you review all elements. So all the equipment on site, all of the talent that's needed. So your technicians that are needed, making sure that you're on the same page with that. And then ensure your timelines are in sync. And so this is an important one too. Really go through and say, load in is at this time of day on this day. And you plan on being done with load in at this point. We run into rehearsals at this point. Rehearsals are done at this point. We have a cue to cue here. You really work through your production schedule, work through your run of shows for each element of your event, and make sure that your timelines are in sync. This is a key element because at that point, this could be like a quick, that's going on then. Okay, let's change that around. Super easy to fix. Can be very expensive to fix once you're on site or in the middle of your production schedule and you realize you weren't in sync. So make sure that you have that pre-load in discussion. I would recommend at least a week before, if not further out than that. But once you have like all of the components in your head and you feel like you have it all planned, make sure you're on the same page with your AV provider lead. And the next question or the next thing that I would consider, number 2 here, does your room space include all of the tech? So meaning, does your room design include all of the tech? You might not be able to fit everything in the room once AV is added. And this is a common story that we'll see is that, and it's not something that's intended to be this way from the hotel, but maybe a hotel will sell the ballroom and say that you can fit so many people in this space. They might even give you a drawing showing, projectors and screens and all that kind of stuff. And you can fit everything in there. But when you load in all the AV, you realize, we're not going to be able to fit 500 people in here. We can only fit 425 people and we sold 500 tickets. So what are we going to do? So to avoid that, again, working with your AV lead to develop an actual drawing with all components, not just tables and chairs, but all of the AV components with the space that's needed to put that in the room. That's very important and can be just a real pain on site if that hasn't been thought about. So that's something that can save money and take something that is actually a poor experience for your attendees to a fantastic experience because they just had enough room to move around. Another mistake or another question that you need to address is, so number 3 here is make sure that you book enough time with the space, that you actually take possession of the room itself, ensuring that there's adequate time to load in. So another mistake that I've seen that's made is a space is booked, a ballroom is booked, or a venue space is booked. And you haven't consulted with your AV provider to say, how long does it actually take to set this thing up that we're trying to do? And so you're making some assumptions that, hey, I'm assuming it'll probably take 4 hours. So we take possession at 8 a.m. on Friday and we have a lunch event at noon. And it's actually maybe a full day or more setup. So you needed really the day before to set that room up. So make sure you're in sync with your AV partner, that you have possession of the room with long enough time to load in. And don't forget about load out too. So your banquet might end the last evening at 9 p.m., but it might be a 6-8 hour load out. And so questions around overtime come up and also safety. So a lot of times I've seen long day, last day of show, and then they're expecting the AV provider to load out that night, late into the night, because maybe the hotel had sold the room because it wasn't communicated that you needed extra time for loadout. And it might not be that big of a cost difference to just keep the room for one more day and pay your AV crew one normal day rate as opposed to massive overtime expenses. And it can create actually an unsafe environment. Everybody's tired on the loading dock at night in the dark. People can get hurt. So you can avoid some of these issues by just booking enough time on either end of your event. And the way that you discover that time is, again, communicating with your AV lead, your AV provider, with the time that they're going to need for the solution that you have. One thing, the next question I would address, number 4, will be ground versus air here in my notes. And what I mean by that is everybody loves to ground support because rigging charges have become super expensive in many venues. However, rigging rigging things in the ceiling, and I'll get to that later in this series a little bit more detail. But that could actually be the best solution for your event, and it's something to talk through and to discover. And if that's the case, then we need to make sure that all elements around that are addressed with the venue, with your AV provider. So that's a big deal. It's something that can help with that floor space issue. Sometimes if you're in a tight room, if you get everything in the ceiling, then you can actually fit more people in the space, therefore giving you a little bit more room in your budget to actually do that. And so it's something to explore. I know that people like to do ground supported systems, and I'm all for it, but there is an appropriate time and place for flying systems in the air when it makes sense. So that's something to explore. And then the last piece, my number 5 here, is create your schedule, your production schedule of your event to avoid overtime when you can. So I've seen production schedules of an entire event, and sometimes if certain sessions were moved just a little bit, you could avoid overtime entirely. But because it was scheduled a certain way, you're paying a lot more on production labor than you could have if you would have just changed a few sessions around. So again, this discussion, this pre-load-in discussion with your AV lead or in the sales stage of your working with your AV company, working on schedule. And is there a smarter way to do this? Is there a way that we can avoid overtime entirely, or can we compress overtime a little bit? That can have a massive effect on your budget and getting the best out of your team. So I'll give you a story of where, just a practical example. And it, again, nothing that I'm saying is revolutionary or super groundbreaking. But my goal here is to just give you some tools to work through your next event, your next general session, to ask correct questions so that you can be more economical with the budget that you have. So we were working with a client once, and they wanted the AV to load in on day 1 of a 3-day production sequence, and be rehearsal ready by day 2, kind of like midday, and then show ready by day 3. Well, we noticed after we saw their full production schedule and what they were trying to accomplish, that while all of the event rentals like tables, chairs, linens, all of that stuff, they needed to load that in on day 1. But for what we were deploying for AV, we realized we could load in the morning of day 2 and be ready for rehearsals midday on day 2. And that ended up saving the client thousands of dollars on rental and labor charges by just cutting 1 day out of a 3-day schedule and compressing it to 2. So this is why simple conversations can actually save money if you're willing to be flexible and discuss, in the planning stages. So hopefully that was helpful. Part 1 of the Designing a Better General Session series. If you're planning a corporate meeting or conference and want a production partner that simplifies the AV process, visit lemg.live to learn more. And if you enjoyed the Event Pro Show, this episode of the Event Pro Show, just head to theeventproshow.com and you can see our entire backlog of episodes where either I'm giving extra tips about how to work with an AV partner a little bit better, or I'm interviewing somebody that is somehow related to corporate events and is an expert in their space that I just want to introduce to you. I think you should know. So there's kind of a wealth of information there if you wanted to check that out. But either way, thank you for spending some time with me, and we'll see you on the next one. The Event Pro Show is a production of LEMG, video by Nick Barrett, audio and post-production by Prince Thompson. You can learn more about us at lemg.live.